More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Hope you're having a great day. I'm doing the show sitting down today, which I usually do it standing up. I hit legs yesterday, and my hamstrings are tight, man. So I'm just, we're just going to sit down. We're going to relax. We're going to continue to talk more Colts football. Dallas Clark is going into the Colts Ring of Honor this year. I got to be honest. I don't know how the Colts Ring of Honor thing works, but seems to me like a guy like Dallas Clark should have been in the Colts Ring of Honor a long time ago. Dallas Clark is one of my favorite Colts ever. Okay, so my brother, so I did not grow up a Colts fan. I grew up just south of Nashville, Tennessee. So you're like, Jonathan, are you a Titans fan? No, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. But my older brother, Caleb, he grew up a huge Colts fan. So we watched the Colts a lot growing up, and in large part of that was because my brother wanted to watch the Colts, right? Because they were good. They were on in prime time a lot because of Peyton Manning, and they were competing for Super Bowls and those things when I was growing up. And so because of that, we watched the Colts play, or I watched the Colts play a lot of football growing up. And Dallas Clark always stuck out. Always. He was tough, very much played football at Iowa. Okay, was a bit of an anomaly when it came to tight ends at that time. Like at that time, they were very much viewed as guys that came in and blocked. And Dallas Clark, he blocked, but he wasn't a blocking tight end. He was a receiving tight end. He was tough, and to be quite frank, like he was one of the best receiving tight ends when he was in the league in 07, 08, and 09. Those were the peak years of his career. During those 3 years, he was the best tight end in the NFL, and I don't think that that's hyperbole. He was truly dominant and transcendent at that position. And whenever I think back on athletes, especially older athletes, I like to compare them to how we play the sport today. And so whenever I think about Dallas Clark, I think he would have been better in today's NFL because teams throw the ball to their tight ends a lot more. Teams look for tight ends in the NFL draft. Kyle Pitts was a top 5 pick a few years ago. We saw, what's his face out of Georgia. He was a top 15 pick this year. Like tight ends are becoming more and more important, and they're becoming more and more skilled. And because of that, teams want them. Like teams want good, strong, dominant tight ends that can, add another layer to their passing game. Okay. And I think that in today's NFL, Dallas Clark would have been better because teams throw the ball to their tight ends a lot more than what they did. And that brings us to Top 10 Tuesday. Now, I'm going to try to do this every Tuesday because I love doing this, and lists are always fun. So today, my Top 10 Tuesday is these are the 10 players that would be better today than they were in the past when they played. I have a couple of honorable mentions because, I made the list, and when I make my list originally, I send them out to some of my buddies, and they send back like, what about this guy? What about this guy? Just to make sure that I didn't miss anybody. So honorable mention number 1 is going to be Devin Hester. Devin Hester, when we think about his career, he, obviously all the return stuff, pops, right? The punt returns and the kickoff returns, right? Like I remember him returning, I believe it was the opening kickoff in the Super Bowl against the Colts back in 2006, right? Like that stuff would have been the same, but I think that if he played in today's game, he would have been a truly special receiver. Okay. And when I think about him, I think about Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill was drafted in the 5th round as a return specialist, like how Devin Hester was. But Tyreek Hill was so explosive coming out of college that Andy Reid just found a place for him in the offense. And NFL teams, I think, would have done the same thing today for Devin Hester that they did for Tyreek Hill. Yeah, like they would have looked at Devin Hester and how explosive he was, and they would have been like, we're going to figure out some way to put the football in this guy's hands outside of just returning kicks. Like he's one of the most explosive players in the history of the NFL. For his career, he averaged 12 yards a touch from scrimmage. That's every time he touched the ball on average, he was going to pick up a first down. Okay, when he got the ball, good things tended to happen. The issue is he just didn't get the ball that often from just a normal offensive standpoint. Teams today, I think, would have figured out a way to scheme him into the offense a little bit more because offenses are just more creative now than what they were back in, the early 2000s. So, he probably would have been schemed in through, like screens and reverses and things like that. And I think he really would have struck some fear into the hearts of every defensive coordinator in the NFL, and obviously every special teams coordinator as well. So honorable mention, Devin Hester. One more honorable mention, Reggie Miller would have been awesome in today's NBA. The three-point shooting would have translated. He would have taken more threes. He'd have been, the guy that he was back then, just in a more modern times. Like, he would have found a lot of success. So those are my two honorable mentions for my top 10 Tuesday players that would be better today than they were back then. Because over, the course of time, like, sports evolve. That's just what happens. NFL teams throw balls to their tight ends more. NFL teams throw the ball more in general, right? Like looking at the NFL in 2024 and just going back a decade to 2014, the league looks very different than what it did. And the NBA has changed a lot over the past 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, so on and so forth. Baseball has changed. That's right. I've got a baseball player on here. I didn't think I would because baseball's, for the most part, it's pretty similar, right? Run, throw, and hit. I haven't really changed outside of that, but we got it going. I'm excited about this list. So let's start at number 10. Top 10 Tuesday for players that would be better today than they were when they played. Number 10, Peja Stojakovic, 6'10", shot 40% from three for his career. He would have been an absolute weapon in today's NBA game. Okay, the league now, it's all about big, tall, long guys who can shoot the basketball. Okay, like, you can't play in the NBA anymore if you can't shoot. Okay, and the guys that can't shoot are 7-footers that are really athletic. Think Daniel Gafford. Think Isaiah Jackson of the Pacers. Like, those are the guys that can't shoot. But if you can, like, they're going to find a place for you somewhere. And Peja would have been great. He was great on those Sacramento Kings teams. Won a championship in his final year in the league playing for Dallas. So he's a guy that I think 1,000% would have translated to the league now, and he would have been much better just because of the era of basketball that we're in, where shooting is everything. Same thing applies to who I have at number 9, Steve Nash. He was a career 43% three-point shooter. Okay, Steve Nash is awesome. Love Steve Nash, okay? And if you watch TJ McConnell, he clearly loves Steve Nash too. There's a lot of similarities in terms of the way that they navigate the baseline, but that's, I can talk about that another time. Steve Nash only took 10 shots a game for his career, and only 3 of those were three-point attempts. Like, he was such a pass-first guy, and that just wouldn't have happened today. Okay, like his shooting numbers would have been way up. Like, coaches would have demanded for him to take so many more shots because he was an incredible shooter. Like when we think of Steve Nash, I think the first thing that we think about is the passing, right? But that's because he didn't shoot the ball a ton, right? He was very much a table setter for guys like Amari Stoudemire, okay? So, if he plays in today's game, he's easily a 20 points per game for his career guy. He's sitting at about 14 and a half now. Like, in the modern NBA, Steve Nash would have been more aggressive, and that would have improved his career numbers, and his impact on games would have been greater than what it already was. Number 8, Arvydas Sabonis. What team doesn't love a passing center from Europe? In today's game, like, he's one of the best passing centers ever. And he was a decently good shooter. I think if the three-point shot had been as big of a deal as it is now, I think he would have turned into a good three-point shooter. Like, when Arvydas Sabonis played, a lot of shots from big guys were taken in the lane. He was a guy who would step out into the mid-range and shoot it decently well. Okay, and let's look at the NBA now. The NBA has plenty of big European dudes that can pass the crap out of the ball. Think his son, Sabonis, who's having a great continued career in Sacramento after being a good player here in Indianapolis. Obviously, Jokic jumps off the page, and Arvydas Sabonis has a very similar skill set to those guys with the ability to pass the ball and the ability to knock down a mid-range jump shot. He was also huge He was 7'3", 280 pounds. I made a mistake. On Friday, I did a Fun List Friday where I highlighted the top chubby white athletes of all time. Arvydas Sabonis should have been on that list. That's on me. That's a mistake on my part. But Arvydas Sabonis would have been much better in today's NBA than what he was when he played back in the day. Also, if you have any recommendations for this Top 10 Tuesday, feel free to send them my way. Hop on the YouTube chat, just search for Indy Sports Ticket, and I should pop up. You can throw them in there. Otter Creek threw out a couple. Chris Jackson, Mohamed Abdul Rauf, I think that's how you pronounce that. A big guy who used to be able to shoot it well in the NBA. So if you have recommendations, you can drop them there, or you can tweet at me on Twitter at __ Jonathan Smith, and you can send them my way. Number 7 for players that would be better today than what they were back when they played. Marshall Faulk, great running back, one of the best that we've ever seen. But the thing that really popped about Marshall Faulk, especially when he played for the Rams, was how well he could catch the ball out of the backfield. And that has been more of a movement in recent years with players like Christian McCaffrey. Okay, like having guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield can just, they can elevate your offense. Faulk had 5 straight seasons where he caught 80 balls or more out of the backfield as a running back. Like, that's nuts. That doesn't happen in today's NFL, and we throw the ball more than ever. Okay, one of those years in 1999, Faulk had over 1,000 receiving yards. Like, that is a skill that NFL teams want their running backs to have now. It's part of why Bijan Robinson went number 8 overall to the Falcons 2 years ago. It's part of why he was so impactful as a rookie, right? Same thing with Gibbs in Detroit. Like, NFL teams want their running backs to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield, and Marshall Faulk could do that, and that is a skill set that would be utilized even more now than what it was back when he was playing for the Rams. So he was great on the ground, and he definitely, would have been an every down back, but that production on third down would have been great. And finding out now that the radio air is dead, that's not good. That means I can curse now. That's not fun. So, okay, let me get engineering on that. But the show goes on here on the live stream. Thanks to everybody who's tuning in on here on the live stream. Yeah, so I can't multitask, which is an issue when I'm doing radio and I need to text people. So anyway, that was number 7, Marshall Faulk, once again, doing Top 10 Tuesday, the top players that would be better today than they were when they actually played. Number 6, Steve Young. Okay, Steve Young, like, his legs, I think, would be utilized way more today than they were in the 80s and 90s. Steve Young was an athletic quarterback in a time where you didn't have to be athletic. Like, you could be as stiff as a pole, and they were going to put you back there and be like, offensive line block. Now, teams want their quarterbacks to be athletic. Dare I say, you can't play quarterback in the NFL unless you're athletic, and there's multiple reasons for that. They've cut down on, how often you can do these, like, padded practices and things of that nature. But, like, because of that, like, offensive lines just don't block as well as they used to. Steve Young and a modern offense, I also think, just would have complemented his ability to run a little bit more, because that's just an element of the NFL now that seems like every team has. So Steve Young at 6. Number 5. I probably should have put this guy a little bit higher than what I did. Number 5, I put Pistol Pete. Pistol Pete would have been unreal. He would have been awesome in today's NBA. He could do everything at a much higher level than everyone that he played against. He was just weird, didn't gel with teammates because of that. So, he played it in the league when there was a 3-point line his last 3 years. Okay, so those last 3 years, there was a 3-point line, and he shot 75% from 3, which is absurd. Now, obviously, he wasn't taking a ton of threes because of the era, but today, like, he would have, and he would have been just a great shooter in today's NBA. The handle was sick. He could pass the ball. I'll never forget reading his biography way back in the day. And, like, he listed out, all these drills that his dad used to have him do, who was a great college basketball coach. I remember I would go out into my yard. I was like 11, and I would do all the drills that Pistol Pete did. And yeah, it didn't help me at all. was an average basketball player at best. So, yeah, I mean, Pistol Pete, man, he would have been awesome in today's NBA. Number 4, Ricky Henderson, which I say that, and the question is, like, how could Ricky Henderson be better? Like, he stole, a million bases. Not really. He stole 1,406 bases. And it's like, how could he be better? And the essence of the list is, like, how have rules and the way that the game is played, like, how has that changed to where it would help some of these older guys? So, like, for Steve Young, like, he won a Super Bowl, was great in San Francisco. But because of the way that the game is played now and how teams throw the ball more, and it's more complementary to these quarterbacks that can run and move, like, his numbers would have been better. I think he would have been held in higher regard if he played quarterback today. And with Ricky Henderson, it's like, Jonathan, he stole, 1,400 bases in his career. Like, how much better could he have really gotten? The bases in Major League Baseball today are bigger. They made them bigger 2 or 3 years ago. So the length between bases now, the base path is no longer 90 feet. It is 89 feet, right? Ricky Henderson stole 1,406 bases in his 25-year career. And when he got thrown out, it was close. You tell me he has to run a foot less, he would have stolen even more bases. Plus, we have the pitch clock now, which makes it easier to time your jump when you're on base. And Major League Baseball limits the number of times that you can pick off. They limit the number of times that you can throw over to first base. Can you imagine Ricky Henderson standing on first base? He knows that you have to throw the ball, in 20 seconds or less. He's tuned into you. You throw over once. That means you can't throw over again. He's taken the base. He would have stolen 1,500 bases if Ricky Henderson played baseball today, which is an idea that doesn't even feel real, but it's undoubtedly true. He would have stolen more bases if he played today. Oh my gosh. Just love Ricky Henderson. Just an incredible player. Number 3, Dallas Clark. If I'm making a list because of someone, then, like, they have to be on it. Dallas Clark, teams throw the ball now more than ever, right? That 07, 08, and 09, those 3 seasons, that was the peak of his career. He was the best tight end in the NFL those years. And I don't think that that's hyperbole. He and Peyton Manning were electric, right? If Clark hadn't been teammates with Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison, then his career numbers would have been even better, right? If he played in today's game, he'd be mentioned with the likes of, Travis Kelce and George Kittle and Mark Andrews and these guys. Like, he would have been one of the best tight ends in all of football and a walking mismatch. Okay? Like, just, he's awesome. He's awesome. Number 2, Michael Vick. He's the faster version of Lamar Jackson, right? Like, he would have been otherworldly. He could throw the ball a mile. He pushed it down the field with just an absolute dynamite, with just an awesome arm that he has. So Michael Vick at 2. Number 1, Charles Barkley. He would have been a dominant small ball 5. Okay, I'll never forget. So growing up, I was a big John Stockton fan, in large part because of my dad. I'll never forget being, 13 or 14 years old, reading John Stockton's autobiography. And he talks about how he gets invited to try out for the 84 Olympic team. And, he's making it past all these cuts, and they're getting down to the end. And he said that Charles Barkley used to really upset Coach Knight because Charles Barkley would grab the rebound, take the ball coast to coast, and dunk it every time. And Coach Knight would have a fit, yelling at Charles Barkley to give the ball to the freaking point guard, and on and on and on. And Charles Barkley did not care. Charles Barkley in today's NBA would be so dominant because while the league's gotten bigger, it's also gotten a little more frail. Like, guys are skinnier. They aren't as thick as they used to be. Like, teams would have put Charles Barkley on the block as a small ball 5 and just absolutely dominated. They would have punished other teams whenever they decided to go small. And because of how athletic he was, he could play the 4, obviously, right? Like, that's the position that he played. So Charles Barkley would have been awesome. Yeah, so he takes the number 1 spot for guys that would be better in today's game versus when they played. So that's going to do it for Top 10 Tuesday. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to get into the Mavericks and Celtics storylines because there's a lot of drama in this series just based off of how these teams know each other, a lot of crossover between players. So we're going to get into that here in about 4 minutes.